Hello early friends! Today I have a little bit of a special video for you. I've been talking for the longest time that as storytellers we should be able to look into all sorts of different mediums and analyze the way they create a narrative. Whether it is a video game, or a movie, or a comic book, or anime, we should be able to look into it through the eyes of a storyteller and analyze the way that it created a story. With that being said, today I want to talk about a very special anime that I finished watching recently. If you've been following me on Twitter, you heard me mildly talking about this. This anime is called Aldnoa.Zero. Now, just to explain very quickly how this video format is gonna be. This is not exactly gonna be like me reviewing the anime, although I will be talking about my thoughts. Mostly the point of this is to talk about what I thought were its pros and cons and the way that it created a narrative. So really quickly, let's dive right in. Basic information, what is Aldnoa.Zero? Aldnoa.Zero is a mecha anime. So many people call it like a dark twist on Gundam, and it deals with the struggle between Earth and Mars. The people on Mars have advanced technology, but have very little resources because, spoilers, Mars is basically a desert. While on Earth we have tons of resources, but where technology sucks because we don't have technology, alien technology from the past. So there's a lot of intrigue in the beginning, and a couple of events launch several groups into action, and Mars ends up attacking Earth. And you see this story from three different points of view, actually. You see it from the point of view of Earth, led by Inaho. We will talk about Inaho in a little bit. We'll see the point of view of Mars from Slane's point of view, and in between them stands the Princess of Mars. This anime is broken into two parts that are 12 episodes each. I can tell you, I know that I've been talking about this on Twitter, and I focus mostly on my negative points on Twitter, but I wanted to make this video, one, to talk about the storytelling, and two, to also set the record straight and explain how I feel about the anime. The first 12 episodes are actually solid. Rock solid. I enjoyed them. If anything, my one complaint about the first 12 episodes is that Slane, who's supposed to be a central character, doesn't actually do much, though that is entirely repaired on the second half, of episodes 13 through 24, where he literally becomes the main character of the story. We'll talk about that in a moment. My biggest gripe with the story, and I'll just get this out of the way right now, the first season is solid as hell. It's a really good story, really enjoyable. The first episode of the second half undoes everything that happens at the end, and that we will talk about why that is a problem in the discussion half of this video. But really quickly, that nearly made me stop watching, because that doesn't fly by me. I don't like that. We'll talk about the idea of the emotional bank account in a little bit. But I kept watching just because I wanted to see where the story was going. I felt that there was a point to all of this, and I kept watching, and the first 4 episodes of the second half are hard to get through, but after that, the story actually picks up again. There was a point, I believe around episode 18 of 24, that I was like, it had me on the edge of my seat again. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. Because there was a moment where a character is forced to make a really tough decision that is not going to make anyone happy. And I love situations like that. I love situations that force character development, because nothing changes a person like them being forced to make a tough decision. And as you can tell, I really want to talk about the story, so let's get all of the basic anime pseudo review stuff out of the way. The animation is really good. The voice acting is really good, the characters are all really fun, and the music is amazing. The music for this anime is beautiful and amazing, and you can go check it out. It's awesome. Now, with all that out of the way, let's actually talk about the main things out of here. Story. So, story, as I mentioned, as storytellers, we should be able to dive into any sort of medium and examine it and see the things that worked and the things that didn't work so well. And for Aldnoa.Zero, I came into the story and I immediately found something familiar, something that I really absolutely enjoyed, because for me, stories are about characters. Settings are cool, settings are fun, sure, but if I don't care about the people in that story, then I don't care about the world. Simple as that. I mean, if there's nobody in this world that I relate to or that I emotionally care about, then why am I here for? And thankfully, this anime has character in spades. It's kind of funny because some people even thought it was a detriment to it, because I don't think this is a mecha anime. This is an anime about characters and there happen to be mecha around. Mecha are important to the story, but I wasn't in there for the mecha. The animation is cool, the battles are awesome, that's all fine, but I was there for the character development. That's what I was eating up. And the one thing that this anime does very well, and it keeps the secondary characters in the foreground. They're in almost to its detriment. Some characters that are clearly secondary characters get so much character development that it's kind of amazing. And for someone who just eats that up, I love that. Characters like Ryet, who happens to be a Martian girl who's been living in hiding in Earth for years, gets a lot of character development through both parts of the story. Lieutenant Marito, who begins being the teacher of all the kids, who was originally a soldier back 15 years ago, the last time that Mars attacked, and deals with PTSD, not like we don't talk about, we're not talking about him dealing with PTSD, they literally say PTSD, which I really appreciate. I love it when people actually go out of their way to name the things that a character is going through, as opposed to just have it be ambiguous. I actually like that. And Marito, like, Lieutenant Marito gets the most character development in this story out of the secondary characters. And everyone is just kind of lovable and fun. And it's funny because a lot of stories, and all of the reviews that I read for this, leading me actually watching the anime, kept referring to this as a dark story. Really, really dark and somber, and it was funny for me because maybe it's just because the sort of stuff that I've read in the past and the media that I've been exposed to, I didn't think it was so dark. And I think that it did dark really well because of one reason. Aside from character, the other thing that I really liked about the show is that it balanced humor with the really, really dark and somber nature of war. One of the things that always bugs me about really dark and grim settings is that it's super dark and grim, and people never joke. And I don't know about you, but I do feel that no matter how awful the world is, no matter what terrible thing is happening, what alien is invading, what terrible disease is spreading, people are still gonna joke. People are still gonna endure this grief through some form of comedy, some sort of mockery, or some sort of distraction that is not staring the problem down in the eye. And this anime jumps between lighthearted moments, not too many of them, trust me, not too many of them, but it examines those lighthearted moments in contrast to characters being tortured or people dying, and I like that. I actually honestly like that. I like the contrast because I think I've talked about this in the past, but it's the idea that it's really easy to burn out your reader in one particular feeling, and if the story is nothing but dark and somber and really, really full of death and despair and sorrow, the reader just burns out really quickly. And having this contrast, this, not super sudden, like knee-jerk reactions, but, moments where you come in and out of the story being about people dealing with sorrow, whether it is comedy or romance or distracting themselves in whatever form they can, and reminding us again, oh yeah, there's also war going on. That felt really human to me, and I actually absolutely enjoyed it. I don't know how other people felt about that, but I need that contrast, not only in storytelling, but also just, in the way that I create stories. So again, really quickly, the two things that I thought this anime did really, really well was secondary character love. The characters in the background get so much love in this story. Is kind of heart-touching for me to see all these people who are not just in the background, who are not just like, hey, hello there, I'm your friend from high school, remember me? I'm like, oh, I'm actually still getting character development. That's nice, that's actually super acceptable, and I totally welcome that. The other thing that I thought is that this anime, aside from being a really dark setting, which is of course the nature of war, it still had a little bit of humor in it. And I don't want like a dark comedy, but I wanted that contrast because no matter how hard the world is, no matter how terrible things are, people are still gonna joke because they have to overcome this grief somehow. They have to battle the sorrow in one way or another. Some people drink themselves numb, some people resort to religion, other people just laugh about it because when you laugh about it, you make it seem smaller. And that was always on the end of characters, not really the narrator, not really, or at least other stories that I've read on this nature. That humor has always been on the hands of the characters, and that makes it seem so much more real. So, really quickly, I want you to consider giving your secondary characters a little bit of love, not have them be just, receptacles through which we advance plot or we offer a story advancement. Have them be real people. Give them a little bit of character development here and there. It goes a long way. This story had so much secondary character love that I couldn't help but resonate with that. And again, about contrast, if your story deals with one particular emotion or feeling, keep in mind that, continuing to bombard the reader with that particular emotion may desensitize them, may lessen its impact over time. That's why you need a little bit of contrast. Remind us of the light and then punch us again in the face with the dark. And now let's talk about the things that this story didn't do so well, the things that bothered me, and I already told you about one of them. At the end of the first season is legitimately solid. I'm not kidding you. I watched those first 12 episodes in like 1.5 sittings. It was really fast paced, really emotional, really interesting. I loved it. I truly did. The beginning of the second half of the story bothered me to no freaking end because the ending of the first season has this really finite conclusion where things happen. Really important things happen. And the sort of things that make me go, wow, I wonder what's going to happen next. This is really important. And immediately the next episode undoes most of those things, if not like 99% of them. And I want to talk about the idea of the emotional bank account. The emotional bank account is a concept not only in stories, but also in relationships and life. In any sort of relationship that you have, whether it is a relationship with your spouse, with your best friends, with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or with your reader, every time you claim something, every time you make a statement or you declare something, you are creating a statement within the emotional bank account. And when you don't follow up on that, when you break a promise or when you go back on your word, you deduct from that emotional bank account. And over time, as you share experiences with your reader or your family or your friends or your spouse, you create an emotional bank account with tons of emotional resonance in it. And having this pile of emotional resonance is usually a wonderful thing because it means that people love your work and love you as a person and love you as a spouse, as a friend. But the downside to this is that if you deduct from this bank account, and I'm sure that all of you have experienced things like this, when people that you used to trust betray you or lie to you, and you can literally feel, the bills being taken out of the account, the little coins being counted and deducted and removed. And sometimes that bank account can run dry. There are things that I don't put up with in relationships, there are things that I don't put up with in friendships, and there are things that I don't like my stories to do. When you make a big important statement, a big factual statement that means something, and you go back on your word, like I can literally count the word, like the coin's been taken out of my emotional bank account. And in the beginning, in the first episode of the second half of this story, episode 13, like within 8 minutes, it had undone everything that happened in the previous episode. And I felt blessed because I watched this in one go. When I sat down to watch this show, it was done complete. The 24 episodes were out. I could not imagine the sort of people who watched this going live and watch episode 13 after like 6 months of waiting. That would have been like torture. And it's funny because I watched that and the whole time I was like, why did you trick me? Why did you lie to me? And generally, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I give books a chance, but when that emotional bank account runs dry, I leave because I've lost all faith in the writers. I gave this story another try because ultimately I cared about the characters. There was still enough left in the bank account, and I kept going. But that one thing, and take this out of this rambling that I've just told you right now. Remember the relationship you have with your reader, and consider the movements that you're making, and consider why you're making those movements, because I felt that the things that this show went back on, they could have stuck to their guns. They could have totally stuck with their guns and saw what happened next. Of course, I understand that they probably didn't want to because of the nature of anime culture and certain elements. I'm not telling you what actually happens because I want you to go and watch the show. If I haven't said so already, there should be links to it in the description below. You can go watch it for free on Crunchyroll and Hulu. Anyways, my thing is this, okay? When I read a book, or I watch a movie, or I watch an anime, I want commitment. I want commitment as with any other relationship, and I don't want people to go back on their words. I don't want to be lied to. I don't want to be tricked. I don't like that feeling. It always feels as though it feels like someone is talking down to you. And the idea of having these enormous things that happen, these enormous statements that should mean something, such as character deaths, because character deaths should always mean something. And having the show go back on its word, it's bothersome for me. I don't like that. I understand that that's something that happens all the time in certain anime genres. I get it. It's okay. Whatever they do, I don't like it. But yes, I digress. What I want you to take from this is the idea of the emotional bank account and the relationship you have with your readers, because people don't often talk about that. People forget that there is indeed a relationship between the person who wrote the story and the person who's going to be reading it. And I like to create the most cleanest, finest experience that I can deliver to them, because ultimately I want them to enjoy my story. And I want you to keep that in mind. Not have it be the deciding factor, because ultimately if there's something you want to do, go for it. Just understand that that emotional bank account will have a resonance, and it's a real thing that you have to keep in mind. It's not a happy thing. It's not an exciting thing. You know, relationships can be really problematic, but it's something that you have to keep in mind. You can't ignore it. You know, it's funny because a lot of times when I read reviews or I read certain things, I wonder to myself, particularly the negative ones, and I'm like, now, what did they do that made you that caused that huge deduction in the emotional bank account? What did they do? And usually it's rooted in a particular value or a particular ideal, and it's important to talk about that. But with that talk out of the way, I want to talk about the big thing that bothered me about this show, and it's almost it's funny because I complained a lot about this. I did a lot of complaining on Twitter, but there was a lot of humor behind it as well. So that was mostly why I stuck up to this ridiculous and silly ideal. And there's a character in this story who bothers me. Who bothered me so much that I had to actually stop and break down my feelings about him, because I understood him, and I disliked him as a character, but I understood him as a person, and there were so many layers of emotions that I had to actually legitimately stop. And this character is Inaho, the protagonist of the Earth side. And I had to break down and ask myself, why don't I like him? Do I not like him because he has no emotions, or he shows no emotions? Do I not like him because he's cold at times, or he's too logical? And I realized, and I was breaking it down, I was like, if he had this, but he didn't have this, would I still like him? And I realized that throughout the story, I want to take back a couple of things that I said on Twitter. Inaho shows emotions. Inaho actually shows that he cares about his friends and his family. He is very cold, very logical, very factual about things, but that's the person he is, and that's entirely fine. I read an interview, or I watched an interview with the creators, and I realized why they made Inaho the way that he is. Personality-wise, he is the entire counterbalance to Slane. Slane is the main focus character from the Mars point of view, and while Inaho is cold and unemotional and logical, Slane is emotional and acts rashly and acts out of emotion and doesn't think things through before acting. And this becomes ever so more clear in the second half of the series. And if you haven't watched my videos for too long, I love Slane. And Slane was incredibly fun. Slane was so fun, he was literally the reason why I kept watching through the second half of the series. Because he was, again, he acts out of emotion, he acts rashly, and I love that. I love that in characters, because it's so incredibly human. And that was exactly why Inaho felt, it was so hard for me to relate to him, because he's so inhuman. But I realized this, okay? Inaho being unemotional is okay. Inaho not showing a lot of emotion and being cold and logical, it's fine. That is him as a character, and that is okay. The one thing that I could not put up with about Inaho that bothered me so much is that his archetype is the boy genius. And that's within itself not a problem. The problem that I had with Inaho is that he was always right. Throughout the entire series, all 24 or 26 episodes, I forget how many, he solves the problem every time on his own, on time, and there's never an instance of, he's never wrong, he's never surprised, and that is a huge problem for me. Like, if you remove that from him, if he made mistakes, if he came in cold and calculating and logical and got the problem wrong, or got the answer wrong, I would have still loved them. It would have been fine. This one particular fact, the trait that Inaho is always right, bothered me throughout the entirety of the series. Because there came a point when I realized that I was no longer afraid for the Earth side, because they had Inaho. And as long as Inaho was alive, as long as Inaho was on their side, everything will be fine, because he is basically Superman. He is John Cena. He always wins, and you can't stop him, and that is a huge problem for me, because that one, to me, is entirely unrealistic, and it's not fun. I don't know if you've gotten that from me, but, like, I love tragic characters way more than winning power trip characters. Like, Inaho wins every time, and he's always prepared, he's never surprised, he always gets the right answer well before it's a problem, and I'm like, you make this not fun. This is a universe with danger and people dying and alien technology against really crappy mechs, and you're making it not exciting. And ultimately, I know that I'm being really negative about Inaho, but it's because I want you to notice the pitfalls of this sort of always right character. Like, really, if Inaho had been wrong a couple of times, I would have been fine with it, because the entire time that I was watching the show, all 6 episodes, whatever it is, I felt that I was being set up. And me, as a writer and as a storyteller, I thought, Inaho is always right. He makes this feel safe. He has to die. He has got to be Dumbledored out of the way. Yeah, spoilers, Dumbledore becomes a mecha pilot. But it's like, literally, he's too useful. He must die. And spoilers, he doesn't die. He spends the entirety of the series getting the answer right. And I know that most people don't care about this. Most people are just like, hey, it's a show, it's fun, who cares? And it is fun, and the secondary characters are incredibly fun, the music is great, and the setting is actually really fun, and it's a good story with a lot of character and a lot of important talk about the dark nature of war. It's good. Inaho is a problem for me. Inaho is incredibly problematic, and thankfully, near the end of the series, he had a couple of personal pitfalls, and he was able to make sacrifices for himself, and I appreciated that. It felt a little late, but ultimately, I think that the story I mean, when you put all the things together, do the pros outweigh the cons? And I think that that's not the right way to go about doing things. That's why when I opened up this video, I wanted to make it clear that this is not exactly like a review. I'm not going to give you a score. One, because I don't think that a person's complex opinion can be represented numerically. But also because, you know, my opinion is just mine. What does my opinion matter? You are a storyteller of your own, with your own opinions and your own views on the world. You may hate this anime. You may love it. You may actually fall in love with Inaho. I don't know how you could, but you could. I can't stop you from that. That's just the craziness of all of us being independent and unique individuals. That's fine. What I want you to take from this is the idea that, in my experience and the way that I enjoyed this story, when I look at all the pros and all the cons and the 24 episodes that I spent watching this world through the eyes of these characters, I enjoyed it. I honestly did. And my thing is this: if my relationship with Aldnoah.Zero had been an actual relationship, we had a really bumpy. We had a really good start. We had like great 6 months, and then we had a big awful event that almost made us break up. We almost broke up over something rather petty, and our relationship got great again. And at the end of the series, because the ending is always very important for me, and I finished watching the series, and the ending wasn't what I wanted. The ending wasn't what I wanted, but I was still happy, because you don't always get what you want, and that's just like people complain about. It's like the end. It didn't end up like I wanted it to. Well, why would it end up like you wanted it to? It's ultimately in the storyteller's hand, and from personal experience, right? Endings are the hardest thing to write ever. So I respect when somebody can create an ending that may not be what the audience wanted, but my god, is it actually fulfilling. And the ending for this, and I'm not telling you what actually happens, but I want to tell you this: why it's so effective and why ultimately it felt like the ribbon around a really good present. It may not be a perfect present, it's not exactly what you wanted, but it's a pretty good present nonetheless. It feels like the present from a friend who, may not exactly have known exactly what you wanted, but got you something thoughtful, something with thought and feeling and caring. And the ending of this show, it was something that I like to refer to as uncertainty on solid ground, because the future is uncertain. I don't know what is going to happen in the future of this world, and it makes me want to watch more if there's more coming. But the key word here is solid ground. What happened in the past is clear. There is no question, no uncertainty, no doubt. And I like that. I like it when the past is set in stone and we can leave that behind. And what only matters now is the future. And that is really good. That's actually something that everyone should look up to, a story like that, especially if you're writing a series. A story where the events that happened in the past are set. There is no ambiguity, there's no uncertainty. And everything that matters is what's coming forward. And I appreciate that. That ending could have ruined this experience for me if it had been anything else. And I think that this ending, one, did not only make sense for the series, but also it felt rather uplifting. It wasn't happy. It's not a happy ending at all, especially for some characters. But overall, it felt right. And that is, to me, one of the particular feelings of writing endings, because people complain, like, the ending wasn't this, the ending wasn't that, and I'm like, but did it feel right, though? Because every story has only one ending, the way that it's supposed to end. People have, like, how it should have ended, and now I always chuckle at those because it's silly, it's a little bit silly, it's all just humor. This story was meant to end like this, and the ending of this series felt right. It wasn't happy, it was tragic, but the past was behind us, and I appreciate that, and the only thing that mattered, the only thing left to us, was the future. Looking up at the sky, the blue sky, and wondering what will be coming next. And that left me on a really high note, actually. When I finished watching the series, I was sitting down and I was like, I didn't like Inaho. I actually didn't like him. I appreciate him as a person, but that one trait, the John Cena / Superman trait, I can't stand that. And that really, disarms the tension, but ultimately, I began pushing Inaho out of my memory, and I kept focusing on the things that I cared about. Islaine, the two princesses, the really powerful hint of racism that happens in the story between Martians and Earthlings, and little things like that. Like, seeing a little girl be actually racist meant so much to me, because you usually see the side of racism on, like, big, ugly, old men, and you see this one girl who's been forged by a society that has been taught that Martians are better than Terrans. And you see her have this, that face of disgust that goes, Terrans are disgusting beings, princess. You know that. And I'm like, I love you so much. You are a person, a creation of the world that you lived in, and that makes so much sense. I totally, absolutely appreciate someone that has the balls to do that. Of course, that character changes over the course of the story, but having that idea and committing to your own ideal of the story, it means so much to me. I know that I talked a lot about cons and a lot of things that I didn't like, particularly Inaho, who has the personality of a potato. But yes, I digress. I've been going on for way too long, fangirling about my thoughts on this anime. Ultimately, I did enjoy it. It was fun. I think that if you have a little bit of time and you don't mind the appearance of John Cena every now and then, then I recommend you should check out Aldnoah.Zero. It is a wonderful anime. The first half of the season, I guess, or the first half of the show, because it's technically not seasons, it's technically halves of the story. But the first half is awesome, super solid, and there's no way you're gonna watch the first half and then not start the second half. Just step lightly onto the beginning of the second half, and then right on, because the story gets really good. It gets really intense, lots of tough choices, and those are the things that I live for. And yeah, really, that's how I feel about Aldnoah.Zero. As always, I hope that this video helped, and I hope that if anything, I give you another point of view, my point of view on this particular story. I want you to, if you've seen this story and you have your own thoughts, please feel free to go into the comments down below and let me know what you think. Did you actually like Inaho? I want to see what you think. Like, personality-wise, I'm okay with him. I know that I joked about him having the personality of a slice of toast, and that's mostly the face of a slice of toast, because he doesn't show much emotion, but I know that he feels for his family, his friends. I get that. But, that one particular trait of him never being wrong bothered me a lot, and I kept feeling like I was being set up, because this was created by the guy who did Madoka Magica, which has 2 amazing plot twists in that story. You should go and watch Madoka Magica. Really good story. And I kept feeling like I was being set up, and when that didn't happen, I felt a little bit cheated, and of course a little bit of a deduction on my emotional bank account, and it was weird. I don't know. Again, feel free to make this a discussion. Feel free to go down into the comments below and let me know what you think. It was really fun. If you enjoy content like this, me talking about the stories that I've been enjoying and analyzing the pros and cons of their storytelling, but give it a like and let me know what you think. If you want more stuff like this, I will gladly make it. I've been dedicating more of my free time, because I'm terrible at spending my free time, and I thought, you know what, let's watch stories and actually, analyze them and enjoy them most of all, and I definitely did enjoy Aldnoah.Zero. But with all those things said, of course, as I've mentioned, there are links to the Crunchyroll and Hulu links down in the description below. You can go watch this show for free online, you don't have to pay a dime, go and enjoy it, and, see what you think. The first half is amazing and spot on, and the music is great, you should go and watch it. With all those things said though, subscribe to all the socially related things. If you like even more writing advice content, you can head over to my official writing blog over at maxkirin.tumblr.com. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll be seeing you soon! Mwah!